Hi guys, I'm Libertman, forced to be alone but free to decide how to live it. And welcome to the second live stream of the day. In this episode, we're going to examine what real peer-reviewed neuroscience and psychology research tell us about why many men today feel apathetic, demotivated, or permanently drained. We often hear terms like male apathy or male burnout, lack of drive, numbness, but few go to the data. So today we go to the data. We will rely on two important and recent studies. The first study is related to stress and reward decision-making differences between the sexes. And the title is Sex Differences in Reward-Related Decision Processing Under Stress by the authors Lighthall, Sakaki, and Vasunilashorn. So what did they do? They used fMRI, brain imaging, and they exposed participants, both men and women, to a stress induction, a cold press style, that is a well-known stress method, and then asked them to perform a monetary reward decision task. That is a risky reward lottery version, similar to real-life reward versus risk decisions, to see how stress alters decision-making and reward processing in the brain. So, which were the key results? Well, the results were that under stress, men and women diverged, while under no stress, their behaviors were similar. After stress, men tended to take more risk, act faster, and pursue more rewards, whereas women became more cautious, slower, and avoided risky rewards. Also, they found that brain activation patterns also diverged. Stress increased activation in reward-related and decision regions, the dorsal striatum, anterior insula, in men, but decreased them in women under the same conditions. So, what all this suggests? Well, stress does not hit men and women equally. In the short term, under acute stress, men's brains seem to boost reward seeking and risk taking, perhaps a kind of fight drive response, while women's brains go into caution mode. In other words, under stress, men may seek reward harder, chase risk, and push more. Then we have a second study related to chronic stress and motivation. The title is An Inverted U-Shaped Relationship Between Chronic Stress and the Motivation to Expend Effort for Reward, by the authors G, Lee, and Chen and Yan. This is a current study from this year, 2025. I hope I pronounced the Chinese surnames correctly. You can check it in the description, the full study. So what did they do? They recruited 90 undergraduate students preparing for high-stakes exams, a real chronic stress context, and measured their perceived stress levels, the PSS, the perceived stress levels, and had them perform an effort for reward task while recording the EEG, specifically measuring the reward positivity, also known as REWP, the reward positivity brainwave, which reflects how strongly the brain responds to reward versus non-reward outcomes. They then analyze behavioral metrics, how often participants accepted to exert effort for reward, and neural metrics, this REWP amplitude, plus a computational measure called drift rate, which reflects decision-making vigor. So, which were the key findings of this study? Well, the relationship between chronic stress, the PSS score, and motivation, effort willingness, brain reward response, and vigor was not linear, but followed an inverted U shape. At low stress levels, motivation was low. Participants were less willing to exert effort for reward. As stress levels increased to moderate, motivation rose. People were more willing to invest effort, and reward responsiveness increased. But beyond a threshold, when stress became too high, motivation plunged. Effort, acceptance, reward response, and vigor, all of them dropped. So, in short, mild to moderate chronic stress may slightly raise drive, but high chronic stress kills it, leaving people indifferent, demotivated, and reluctant to even try. So why this matters in simple words? If your life has constant high stress due to financial stress, overwork, loneliness, existential pressure, unstable relationship, societal collapse feelings, the brain's reward system does not just dull, it flips into a protective shutdown. So your brain stops believing in effort and in the chasing the reward. So you lose hope and you lose interest and desire to act. So what does this data tells us? Well, that in the short term, in the acute stress can trigger a surge in male reward seeking and risk taking that is a kind of defensive overdrive in men. That is what the first study is telling us. But then also in the second study tells us that in prolonged chronic stress, especially when severe, when it is severe, instead it kills motivation, making effort feel pointless, and reward is unappealing, even painful emotionally. So in real life, men under sustained pressure, that is economic hardship, social collapse, isolation, burnout, unstable relationships, may shift from hyperdrive to burnout to numb apathy. So if you link this to what people call the male apathy syndrome or incel culture, male burnout withdrawal, or loss of purpose, these studies shows that this pattern has a neurobiological basis, not just a social one. But let's see what these studies don't say. But what we must not overstate. In the first study looked at acute stress, that is a laboratory stressor, not to decades of life pressures. In the second study sampled young students under academic stress, not middle-aged men with life burdens. So it's evidence of stress motivation dynamics, not a full male crisis longitudinal. So neither proves that all men under stress will collapse into apathy. There is individual variability. The EEG decision, when it comes to the results and what they showed, is that the EEG decision tasks are proxies. So they approximate real life motivation, but are not the same as real world life decisions. So this is evidence of mechanism, but not deterministic fate for men. So if up to this point you find this informative, please help me by hitting the like button and to liking this live stream, this video if you're watching the replay, and subscribe to the channel, because supporting this channel helps keep bringing you this kind of deep research and scientific communication content that are related to men's mental health. So let's continue. As I was saying, the two studies together show a pretty clear message that men often start under stress with a burst of drive. But chronic stress eventually wipes out motivation entirely. And this is exactly the phenomenon many men describe today. When they say, I used to be ambitious, but now I feel nothing. I know what I should do, but I can't get myself to care. I am not depressed, I'm just empty. These are not personality flaws. They are neurobiological responses to chronic overload. So now let's analyze this deeper and interpret all of this through the C4PC model, the 4 macro groups of male personality types. Each group gets hit by chronic stress in a different way, and each group collapses into apathy in its own characteristic way. So let's break it down. Let's start with the internal rationals, who are the analytic, isolated, self-contained, high autonomy, low emotional expression type of men. So how stress hits the internal rational? Well, they already live mostly in their heads. So under moderate stress, they become hyper-focused, almost obsessive. This matches the second study's mid-stress peak motivation region. But when stress crosses the high threshold, their effort-reward loop collapses, and they stop seeing the point of action, and everything becomes not worth the energy. So how they experience the apathy? For the internal rationals, apathy feels like nihilism. They express phrases such as, why bother? Nothing matters, like Metallica's song. All actions lead to the same outcome. So internally they still think clearly, but they lose drive, direction, and meaning. So how they withdraw socially? Well, they simply vanish. No messages, no calls, no updates. They disconnect because interaction feels like a drain, not a source of reward. So let's look what helps them recover from this. What helps the internal rational is a structured goal with measurable progress. A physical routine, lifting, running, movement reactivates this dopaminergic pathway. They need systems, not feelings. So a project with clear boundaries and no social chaos. These men need clarity, predictability, and competence activation to restart their reward system. Now let's see the internal emotionals, who are the introspective, the deep feelers, easily overwhelmed by chaos, and highly sensitive type of men. How stress hits the internal emotional? Well, they are the most sensitive to chronic stress. The second studies gave us this data that stress above threshold kills motivation. And this applies to them almost instantly, more than the other groups, because their nervous system already operate with high emotional bandwidth. With the so chronic stress shuts down their creativity, dulls their inner world, and triggers rumination and emotional fatigue. So how they experience apathy? Well, they don't become nihilistic, but they become numb, with phrases such as, I cannot feel anything anymore, I used to care so much, now I feel hollow, everything I loved feels muted. For them, apathy is emotional anesthesia. So, how they withdraw socially? Well, they disappear to protect their inner world. They stop sharing, they isolate without complaint. They don't seek comfort, they hide. So what helps them recover from this is a gentle emotional reactivation through music, through art, nature, or journaling in some cases. What helps them is also one safe human connection, not too many, but at least one deep person with whom they feel safe to talk with. Also removing overstimulation and small meaning-based goals, not productivity goals. Something that is meaningful to them. So their way back requires emotional oxygen, not pressure from the outside. In the case of the external rationals, who are the ambitious, competitive, goal-driven, outward-focused, and discipline-oriented type of men, stress hits them at first, but making them stronger. Just like the first study showed, that acute stress increases reward seeking and assertiveness in men. So these men push harder, but chronic stress eventually hits the wall. And when they collapse, then apathy kicks in because they reach their limit. So how they experience apathy? For them, apathy feels like identity loss. Who am I without my goals? They ask themselves, why I'm not performing? Something's wrong. My drive used to define me. Their self-image is tied to outputs. So when motivation dies, their whole identity collapses and fragments. So how they withdraw socially? Well, they become irritable, tense, and avoidant. They isolate because they are ashamed of their lack of performance, which is very important for their functioning. So what helps them recover? Well, in the case of the external rationals, it helps them a controlled stress through workouts, competitive games, skill building, a clear roadmap to regain competence, a routine that restores self-efficacy, leadership or responsibility, but in small doses. They need achievement, micro wins, to reboot dopamine circuits. And lastly, the external emotionals, who are the energetic, relational, expressive, driven by social reward type of men. This group depends on external stimulation, fun, people, novelty, variety. So chronic stress hits them exactly at the dopamine pathway that the second study described. The reward responsiveness collapses, and then their sparkle fades. So how they experience apathy? Well, they feel disconnected from life itself. They express phrases such as, "Nothing excites me anymore," "I'm not myself," "The world feels flat." So their natural enthusiasm dies out, and that terrifies them. And how they withdraw socially? Well, at first they cling to people even harder than usual. Then they burn out and drop everything they usually do. They go silent because they feel embarrassed that their personality is gone. So, what helps them recover? Well, in their case of the external emotional, low pressure, low pressure social contact, one on one, not big groups, creative play, um, getting back to movement, but with novelty, walks in new places, new sensory input, different to what they are used to, and emotional validation. So their healing comes from regulated connection and gentle stimulation, not isolation, like in with the introverts. So let's review a bit what we have been talking so far to see what it means this for modern men. These two studies, one on acute stress reward dynamics, the second one on chronic stress, motivation, collapse, together explain why so many men today say, I cannot get started, my goal feels far away, I don't feel alive, nothing is rewarding anymore. So this is not a cultural weakness. This is not a character flaw. This is not men are failing. This is a predictable neurobiological consequence of isolation, of lack of social buffering, of financial instability, of digital overstimulation, of a lack of rites of passage, absence of meaningful community, a chronic stress without relief, and reward systems that are hijacked and depleted. So when a man has stress with no support and effort with no visible reward, his brain protects him by shutting down motivation. So it's important for you to know that it's not laziness, it's self-preservation. So what can men actually do based on this research? Well, first, to rebuild predictable rewards, your brain needs to trust that effort produces benefit. So start with tiny steps, such as cold shower, lifting, 2 daily tasks that you can complete, walking, journaling. Each micro reward leads you to a dopamine reactivation. Then also it's important to reduce chronic stress sources. Not all stress is equal. So start by removing toxic relationship, non-stop digital consumption, chaotic schedules, noise in general, clutter, overstimulation, and start adding everything that leads you to being quiet, add a routine, add boundaries, add sleep stability. All this pulls you away from the high stress and low motivation zone. Then also you have to rebuild social buffering. The single strongest protector against motivation collapse is social support. Not 20 friends, not 30 friends, or even 10. 1 or 2 men you can speak honestly with. So if you have none, that's what this channel is for. We build this space together. So you have this space to and you have myself as your friend as well. You can interact with me and start from there to build your new friendships. Also, it's important to know your C4PC type and use the right strategy that is tailored to your needs. Don't follow general advice. That is what this channel for. So, because different men require different recovery paths. One size does not fit all. That's why this channel and this model I developed exist. So as I close this live stream, remember that if you feel apathetic, if you feel like you are not yourself, if you feel like your drive has vanished, it is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you've been carrying too much for too long with too little support. Your motivation did not die. It shut down to protect you. But it can come back. Of course, slowly. But if you rebuild your environment, your support, and your stress threshold. So we're going to do this together. Video by video, live stream by live stream. Stay connected to all this data that is scientific based, and use this as a clutch to restart your new way, back to motivation and back to building new friendships. So thank you so much for being here in this second live stream of the day. By joining this live stream, please like the video if you're watching the replay. Leave your comment about whether you have any apathy situation in your life. Share with the rest. Leave your question in the comment section. And please share with the replay with anyone who you feel can be helpful. So thank you again and see you in the next one.